All right, so we're going to start with a game.
Okay.
You ready?
Sounds fun.
All right. So, this or that, should people save or spend?
I would say save. Definitely.
Should people use a budgeting app or a spreadsheet?
I would honestly argue neither.
Why?
Just because self-discipline is a huge problem that I think most people, including myself, definitely been guilty of that, have in today's world. So I think the smartest and most efficient thing you can do is to just pay yourself first. Whether it's a brokerage account or a savings account, I think every time you get paid, you take money exactly when you get paid and you automatically put it into that account and you don't touch it. And then you can spend what's left.
Should people cook at home or eat out?
Cook at home, definitely.
Credit card or debit card?
I would say that depends on how much discipline you have. If you're somebody that can get away with spending on a credit card and paying it off every month, I think there's a lot of benefits to doing that as far as getting cash back, using points. But if you don't have that kind of discipline, then definitely a debit card.
Buy new or buy used?
Oh, new.
One financial habit everyone should start.
Paying yourself first. Before you go and spend your money and you pay your bills, pay yourself first.
One expense people should reconsider.
A new car. Absolutely.
One thing people should never feel guilty spending money on.
I would say their personal health, eating right, physical fitness, that sort of thing.
Going to a gym and stuff.
Exactly, because that's going to get you later in life and it's going to be more expensive with the health issues that come with that.
Hi guys, welcome back to another episode of Faithfully Free, Truthfully Me, FFTM podcast for short. Thank you guys so much for tuning into this episode. I am your host, Hannah Heser. Today we have a guest on the podcast. His name is Jake Heser, my brother. We're going to talk about all things economy, why it's so bad, inflation, where inflation is at right now, and all things money and stuff. So Jake, welcome to FFTM.
Thanks for having me.
Of course. So the first question that I ask all my guests is, what does faithfully free, truthfully me mean to you?
I'll start with the second part of that. Truthfully me just means, I think, living to your own moral and guiding principles that you carry with you through your life and not sacrificing those or changing those. I think when people start doing things in life that kind of sacrifice that guiding principle that they live by, their morals, that's when things start going downhill for a lot of people. When they start shifting those lines and those boundaries in life, that's when I think a lot of things go wrong. So I would say that truthfully me just means living by your morals, your principles, and what you believe in, and not sacrificing that for anything.
Cool. And then faithfully free?
Faithfully free, oh, that's a tough one. I would say that just means, well, I guess you could say having faith, but also just focusing on what's important in life, your faith, your family, your friends, the things that give you meaning and purpose, and having that be the centerpiece of your life. If you start to focus on other things like money or a career or the world or, buying a new car, for example, I think you're going to be bound to those things in a way that's going to make you very unhappy. Whereas if you focus on family and friends and the things that you do in life that give you, and faith, of course, that is going to give you a level of freedom that the material world just can't offer.
Exactly. So to start, I would love for you to just introduce yourself, why you wanted to come on the podcast, or why you're here, and what you do.
Right. Well, I'm here to talk about money, inflation, and economy. And economics, studied economics and finance in school. I work at a large financial institution. I'm a liquidity and funding analyst. Prior to that, I've been doing that for about 4 years. Prior to that, I was in the mortgage industry for about 3. So yeah, I've been in the finance game not that long, really, only about 8 years, but it's been good so far.
How would you explain inflation to someone who doesn't know much about economics?
Right. Well, the textbook definition of inflation is a growth in the money supply. That's technically what it is. Now, you're going to hear people who are economists, like PhD economists. You're going to hear government officials arguing about inflation, and I think that's why it's so confusing, because there's really 2 schools of thought. I'm not going to get too into that, but essentially what I would say inflation is a growth in the money supply, and whenever that happens to a large degree, What corresponds with that is that the actual currency you're using, so think of any time you go to a store and buy something, you're actually, an exchange is taking place, right? Now, when you go and you buy, let's say, a gallon of milk or eggs at the store, you're not bartering with, I don't know, a pair of shoes, right? You're using money. Money facilitates exchange. Now, when you create and expand the money supply so much, like they did during COVID, that money loses value. So it's not that things at the store are actually becoming worth more and that you have to pay more for them. It's the money that you're using to buy things becomes worth less. So if you have the basket of goods you're buying at the store in one hand and money in one hand, it's not the goods getting more expensive, it's the dollar becoming less valuable. And therefore you need to pay more dollars to buy the same basket of goods that you used to. So it's a loss of value in the money that's in your bank account or in your wallet, or if you have somebody that likes to stuff money in their mattress, it loses value.
Interesting. Why do you think inflation is so bad right now? Like, how did it become what it is today?
Money printing, yeah. So what they did during COVID is they, locked people up, basically shut down the economy. They sent stimulus checks to people. They cut interest rates to near zero, and they printed trillions and trillions and trillions of dollars. And when you massively expand the money supply, when the economy is slowing down, you get insane levels of inflation. You could blame the government for mismanagement, which I think is a fair thing to do. But that's really what happens is they printed a ton of money and then they cut interest rates to near zero, which is the other cause of inflation, is actually bank credit creation. So when banks lend tons of money, because that's essentially what happens. You put $1,000 in the bank, they actually only keep 100 of it. They lend 900 of it out, and that $900 is essentially, because you still have $1,000 in your account, so that other $900 is essentially created. And people borrow and spend that money. Prices go up because demand's higher. So it's money printing and commercial bank credit creation, really, are the two drivers of that.
Is the economy fixable, and how do you fix it?
Are you talking specifically about inflation or?
Inflation and the job market specifically.
Well, the unfortunate thing about that is that you can only fix one of those at once, and the other one's going to become a problem. So I'll start with fixing inflation. Real way to fix inflation is either extreme economic growth. You can grow your way out of inflation. Back in the 70s and early 80s, that's essentially what happened. Is they had the U.S. went off the Bretton Woods system. Which the dollar was essentially backed by gold, so you could actually take your dollars to the bank and exchange them for gold. Now we have a fiat system, which means the dollar is backed essentially by nothing other than the full faith and credit that the U.S. government will pay its debts. So you can grow the economy. So economic growth, meaning tons of new jobs, but it comes with inflation. There will be higher inflation, at first at least. But tons of new jobs, tons of new businesses, new banks lending money to people to start their own business. Those people hire people. You're going to get inflation. Prices go up, but you have a lot more people employed, a lot more people buying things, a lot more people selling things, creating things. And essentially the economy can grow at a certain rate faster than inflation can grow. So if the economy grows faster than the money supply, prices kind of reach an equilibrium, and then more people have money, more people have jobs, and inflation doesn't really become a problem. Sure, a gallon of milk might cost $10, but if your average person's making $100,000 a year, then that's not really such a problem. Now, I know that sounds crazy, but that's essentially how inflation works. If wages catch up through economic growth, then inflation becomes less of a problem. So that's how you grow your way out of it. Doesn't look like we're going to do that, though. That's how you fix the job market. Now, to fix inflation, there's really only one way to do it other than economic growth, and that is a recession. Number one, you have to have essentially deflation. That's not where inflation slows down. It's where it actually goes negative. And there's two types of deflation. The first one I already described, which is economic growth being faster than the money supply increases. That causes a downward pressure on inflation because there's so many more goods and services in the economy, and there's only a finite amount of dollars to chase those goods. And so that's how you get good deflation. Bad deflation is when you have a recession, people lose jobs, homes and cars get repossessed, which is never a good thing, but that causes a collapse in asset prices because people aren't going out and spending money. So the stock market comes down, the price of used cars comes down, people aren't able to buy as much at the grocery store. They start going for, off-brand items, or they just don't buy anything. And that puts a downward pressure on prices. But of course, the job market would be in rough shape at that point.
Why might someone receive a raise at work but still feel like they have less money than they did before?
It's really simple. It's because, you get let's say a 3 to 5% raise at work. Meanwhile, the CPI, the Consumer Price Index, which is the government's favorite metric or their metric, I should say, for measuring inflation, is actually higher. They'll tell you, oh, CPI, I think the last reading was like 3.6% year over year. And again, that's the official number. But I don't think that's true. And there's a lot of people that'll look at that and be like, that's not true. If you use the statistic that they used in I think the early 80s before they changed it. So they changed the equation, how they calculate it. It's closer to like 7%. So that's why is inflation is actually outpacing your wage growth, which is obviously problematic because now the money that you get paid from work is actually worth less than, prices that are going up at the store.
What would you say to someone who has so much debt on their credit cards? If they took out a loan for to pay for school, what would you say to someone who's in debt?
I would say you kind of have to live in austerity for a while. It sucks, but I would tell that person that you need to stay away from any more debt. So no new car, don't buy anything. If you have to have a roommate or you have to live at home with your parents, that's fine.
I did that. It's not too bad. It's not great, but
Hey, with rent prices the way they are, it's honestly not that bad. And I think like 40 or
and you
something
get free
percent.
food if your mom
Right?
cooks.
Hopefully your mom's a good cook.
Ours is.
I think so.
Shout out to mom.
But I would definitely say you need to stay away from taking on any new debt, any unnecessary expenses you need to cut. And like I was saying about paying yourself first, only in this instance, all the money that you make that you don't have to spend needs to go to paying off that debt. You need to get out of debt as quickly as possible.
Are small businesses going to be heavily impacted by?
Yes.
Why?
Yes, they will. Just because small businesses typically, they don't have as much of a cash cushion. They don't have the ability to take on new debt as easily as large institutions. Like you look at like the Mag 7, like a Meta, Google, Amazon, Nvidia, and Apple. They're huge companies. Recently, they're usually cash flow positive, except for, I guess, Google this last week went cash flow negative because they're spending so much on AI. They make a lot of money. They have their hands from a business perspective in a lot of different areas of the economy, and they can leverage debt a lot because they're trillion-dollar companies. So inflation actually helps them because they just start raising prices more and more, and then they cut costs where they can, and they expand their profit margins. That's why they make so much money. Small businesses can't. They just can't. Most small businesses, I would say, can't do that. The reason why is because they definitely have a smaller customer base. Small businesses typically are focused on just one area of the economy, and they just don't have the money where they can just borrow. They can't take on the debt that they need, and also typically what you see is since they have a smaller customer base, if you do have a higher unemployment, people start losing their jobs, the small business is going to get hit first, and they're going to get hit the hardest. They also don't have the ability to start laying people off left and right without going out of business entirely like these big firms do. Because, some of these big companies have tens, if not hundreds of thousands of employees. So for them, cutting costs, they can do it pretty efficiently, whereas a small business can't.
Would you suggest people wait to start their business if they have a dream? Or what would you say to a small business owner who wants to start something but just isn't sure about where the economy is?
I think it kind of depends on what the business is and how much debt you're going to have to go in to starting that business. If you're somebody who's a younger person and you're going to fund it yourself and you already have the money and you think that you can start it and you can do well, then maybe it's worth taking the risk. But if you have to borrow money from a bank to do it, I would be very careful about doing that right now, especially because we have high interest rates. The job market's not looking good. If we go into a recession, maybe you were a good business owner and it was a good idea. It's just wasn't right timing. So it just depends. How much is it going to cost you to start the business, and are you going to have to go into debt to do it? I would say if you are going to have to take on a lot of debt to do it, that's not a good idea. But if you can fund it yourself and you think that you can make it, and like I said, you're younger, you have a lot of time to make back any of the money that you lose, and it's your dream, I would say that, go for it. Because there's never going to be a best time to do it. Most businesses fail. So you could do it in the best of economic times. You could do it in the worst of economic times. It just really depends.
For someone who is feeling very financially overwhelmed and not sure where to start, let's say they're in debt, or let's say they want to start something, but they just don't know how, what is one financial step they can take this week?
It depends on the debt that they have. I wouldn't do anything until you get out of debt. You need to focus on debt. Now, if your debt's manageable, like you have a car payment that's like $150 a month, you owe like $10,000 on like a used car that you bought a couple years ago, and it's manageable, that's different. But if you are drowning in personal loans or credit card debt, especially, the first step I would say is probably look at a new credit card that has a 0% interest intro rate. So, it has zero interest for like 18 to 24 months. Transferring that balance over to that card so that you don't have to pay interest, and then all of the money that you are paying back on that card is going towards the principal. So you're not getting charged with interest. Interest is an expense that you're paying someone else. So you need to get away from that as much as possible.
Mm-hmm. Okay, I want to ask some questions on social media. Do you think that social media makes financial stress worse by encouraging people to compare their lifestyles, and why do you think that is?
Absolutely, yes. Absolutely. I think because people see, oh, this person, because like when you look at social media and you see somebody who has everything and you're like, oh, I want that car. Well, how many of those people?
Or I want to take those trips.
Yeah, or I want to take those trips. Exactly. And how many of those people actually can afford to take those trips? I bet you most can't. I bet you most people go into debt. They buy some expensive, you see them in a nice outfit and they've got like one or two of those outfits that they bought on a credit card. And now, they get home and then they're going to have to spend the next couple years paying that off. Right. So you see this person in like a highlight reel, basically, of, oh, I spent all this money on this trip. This is amazing. I bought all these outfits and stuff. And my question is always like, oh, wow, it's not really, oh, wow, that's so nice. It's, oh, how much debt do you have? Because remember, that person did that they bought a nice car. They went on that nice trip. How long did that last? A couple days, a week? How long are they going to spend trying to get out of debt? Years. So you're sacrificing years of your life of stress, financial insecurity, just for a few moments in the spotlight. And I think too many people...
Is it worth it?
Yeah. Well, I think if you ask those people a year later, most of them would probably say no.
But in the moment, they'd be like, yeah.
Of course they would.
You only live once.
And I think that's the danger of social media, is because you're not looking at somebody that went to a nice restaurant and you're like, oh, wow, they had like an amazing time. This is awesome. And then later they're like, oh, my stomach's upset. They're not showing you, thankfully, that side of the meal, like, oh, I ate too much, I'm sick, and they're laying in bed, like, you don't see that. They're just posting the highlight reels.
That's why it's so important to be vulnerable.
Yeah, and obviously nobody wants to put their vulnerable side on social. Well, some people do probably, for sympathy, but for the most part, people just want to put the best times on there. And if you're constantly scrolling social media, you're only seeing other people's best times. And I don't think that's really a fair look at what someone's life's like, because everybody, has the same problems. Everybody gets depressed. Everybody gets angry. Everybody gets an upset stomach sometimes. People don't get a good night's sleep. They don't show you the miserable moments. They only show you the best times. And then, of course, you've got the filters and everything that makes things look even more exciting than they really are.
Yeah. How can we become more content with what we have while still working towards our financial goals?
Kind of like I said earlier, I think just focusing on the things in life that matter the most to you, like your faith, your family, and your friends, and valuing those things more than material items. I think that will bring you ultimately more happiness in the end. You're doing something for other people by being a part of their lives too. So I think that makes people feel a lot happier than just, oh, this is mine. Oh, I bought this. Oh, I bought this. I would say that is definitely the main thing that people can do.
How do you think faith can help us stay grounded when the economy is so uncertain right now?
I would say that just faith in a higher power, just knowing that, God is there and that he is much bigger than the economy. Because there's tons of economies that have risen and fallen throughout history and then risen again just to get knocked back down, because that's how the economy works. It comes in cycles, but faith doesn't, right? It's always there. It's always the big picture. And just remember, and you just need to remember that, because just because the economy is getting bad now and it's probably going to get worse, it doesn't mean it's not going to be good again, because it will. But you got to live your life in the moment, and you should always have your faith with you, whether you have money with you or not.
Exactly. What are some ways that we can trust God while still being financially responsible? Or what are some ways that you trust God while still being responsible?
I would say that just like, oh, I don't need it. Like when I want to spend money on new things, I just realized I don't need it.
Like a gun?
Well, yeah, something like that. Or new golf clubs, new guns, things like that. New computer.
Josh, no new golf club.
Oh, yeah, good luck stopping him. I would just say, You see something, and this happens to me all the time, and then I step away from it. I don't look at it, and I'm like, you know what? Maybe I wasn't supposed to have that. So I think in some way he looks out for me, by just saying, hey, why don't you walk away? Why don't you do something else? Or something else catches my attention. Maybe that was a sign. Oh, I'm not looking at this anymore. I'm looking at something else. And then I come back to it and I'm like, you know what? Maybe I don't. So I think in that way that he just kind of breaks up my attention on whatever I'm looking at. And then I kind of forget about it, or I'm just realize, you know what? I wanted it in that moment, but now that I think about it, I don't need it.
Mm-hmm. Is there a scripture that you always turn to, like your favorite scripture, your favorite Bible verse?
I don't have one. I'm sorry. I don't have a favorite verse.
Mine is Romans 12:2. Do not conform to the patterns of this world, but be transformed by the renewing of your mind. That kind of goes along with the economy too. Renew your mind on what's important and not what the world says you should have.
Yeah, and I think that actually ties in very well to people spending too much on things they see online, or thinking, hey, everybody has this, I need to buy it too. I think that's a big problem that people have. So yeah, that's very valid.
What is one financial lesson that you wish you had learned earlier?
Don't buy a new car until you can afford it.
But it's paid off now, right?
It is, yeah, and it's nice. And I probably won't buy a new car for a very, very long time, just because it is so great not having a car payment.
I wish I could relate.
Yeah, I know.
What is one purchase that you think people often spend too much on?
A new car.
Can't be cars. Has to be something else.
Can't be cars. Oh, man.
Would you say going out to eat?
It depends, I think. I mean, in this day and age, with inflation, everything's getting, prices are going up. The dollar's being devalued so much that you have to spend so much of your hard-earned money on everything these days. So I would say, like, there's a lot of people that don't go out to eat that much. But, yeah, that would definitely be one thing that if you go out too much and you just don't cook at home, yeah, you're going to end up spending way too much money, for sure.
What is the best financial advice that someone has given you? And who gave you that advice?
I would say paying yourself first. I got that from a book, actually. So automatically, I think it was a book called Automatic Millionaire. I can't remember the author, but essentially every time you get your paycheck, automatically every Friday, or every other Friday, I should say, some of that money gets removed immediately and goes to a savings account. And I don't get to touch it, so it's not in my budget. In the book, they talk about actually putting it into like the S&P 500, because they're going off of hey, it gets 7% compounding interest per year. I would be very wary about doing that right now, just because the markets are so high. And if you do get a recession, wanting to get 7% can turn into 50% down very quickly. So paying yourself first definitely is probably the best advice I got, because then it's money you don't touch.
Exactly.
Kind of like your 401k. Yeah.
You can go back in your savings and be like, oh, I'm not broke.
Exactly. Yeah. And if an emergency comes up, you have a cushion.
Exactly. What does financial freedom mean to you personally?
So there's a movie I think it's called The Gambler, with Mark Wahlberg, and he gets in trouble, right? Because he gets up a lot and then he loses a lot of money, so he has to borrow more to go to the high stakes gambling. And he's betting millions of dollars, by the way. So the guy he borrows money from essentially says, I will kill you if you don't pay this back. But essentially he says, anybody gets up that much, you get out. You buy a house, you get a 20-year roof, you get like one of those Japanese cars that runs forever, and you put the rest in a savings account, make a little bit of money, right? He's like, and you live life from a position of, and what that means is you have your own money, right? You're already taken care of financially. You don't have to go work for a company. You don't have to go work for a boss. You don't have to slave away because you don't need it. You can just tell those companies, you can tell that boss, hey, I have what I need. I don't need to work for you. I don't need to do this. I don't need to do that to make a living. That doesn't mean you don't work. It just means you're free to leave your job if you want to, because you have money, you have savings, you're not in debt, you have everything you need to live. You can just walk away at any time. And I think that really doesn't mean you're not working, like I said. Doesn't mean you're not doing something. It just means you're free to leave and to do what you want whenever you want. You're not beholden to a company. You're not beholden to the almighty dollar.
What if your boss is treating you so poorly and you don't want to be treated like that anymore, but you can't find anything else?
It depends what they're doing. If they're just making you work long hours and they're putting a lot of stress on you, I think you just kind of have to toughen it up. It sucks. I know that. Been there. But that's what you have to do, especially if you're in debt. But just remember the debt you did to yourself.
Exactly. So as we start wrapping up, what is one thing that you want listeners to remember when they feel discouraged about the economy or their current financial situation?
I would say this specifically to like our generation and younger people. You may get blamed a lot. The old, pull yourself up by your bootstraps, which is physically impossible, by the way. It's not your fault. If you go on a spending spree and you rack up credit card debt left and right, or you buy a brand new Range Rover, and you're only making like $30,000 a year, yeah, those are bad financial decisions, and that's probably your fault. But if you're a new grad or you're a young person and you can't find a new job, it's not really anything you did. It's not your fault. There are plenty of people with master's degrees, PhDs, years and years of experience right now that have been laid off and they can't find a new job either. It's just the way the economy is right now. It's bigger than one person. It's a bigger thing than you are. And I would just say don't really blame yourself. Just keep chugging along and just know that unless you made bad decisions, this isn't really your fault that you can't find anything. It's just the way the world is right now. It will get better at some point. Could get worse first, but it's not your fault.
To wrap it up, has inflation changed any of your spending habits?
Just putting more money into savings than I normally would. I've been going out to eat less, or like if I go out with friends and, have some beers and stuff, what I'll do is I'll usually have like food before I go out now instead of eating out, just because the price of food at, most of the places I go to,
especially in Nashville.
Yeah, the prices keep going up. Like one of my favorite things was like the teriyaki chicken bowl used to be like $14. Now it keeps going up and up and up, and it's like, dang it.
What the heck, Jonathan's?
Yeah, well.
Throwing them under the bus.
Yeah, well, it's every restaurant. It's not just them. And they have to, because their input costs, the food they buy.
And they have to pay their employees. They have to.
Right, and their costs go up.
Pay for all
and
the
they
food.
can't, shoulder all those costs themselves. Otherwise, they'll go out of business. And that's true of most companies. I definitely think there are some companies, like we can talk about, like a company like Micron raising the price of memory to ridiculous levels, that are kind of scalping people. But I mean, that's not something that you or I would spend our money on, obviously. But for small businesses, they have to do what they have to do to survive.
Yeah, that's awesome. Well, thank you so much for coming on FFTM.
Thanks for having me.
Would you be willing to just say a short prayer for anyone who is like struggling with finances and just kind of remind them that God is with them and they're never alone?
God, these are extremely difficult times, and I just ask that you look after me, you look over my family, you look over my friends, you look over everyone in this country and around the world and guide them through it, help them to make the right decisions, and just keep the evil in the world at bay. Amen.
Amen. Thank you so much for coming on FFTM again. This was fun. It went by fast.
It did. It
really did. But thank you guys so much for listening. I hope you guys were encouraged by this episode. I hope it helped. And I will see y'all in 2 weeks. Hope you guys have an amazing week. See you guys later.